Hi Year 11, this is the second video for your Paper 2 question 5 and it covers the other two types of writing you may be asked about, which is to explain and to advise. Now you'll only ever cover one, but obviously you need to revise them all. And there's one thing that you always need to go for, and that is FLAP, Form, Language, Audience, Purpose. You read the title and you decide form. Are they asking you to write in a certain format? Does it have to look like a letter or an article or something like that? Language, is appropriate for the audience? So is it a bit more informal, a bit more formal, happy, sad? I know we would never use those words, but what kind of mood are you going for? Any methods, any jargon? Audience, who are you writing for? Is it a general audience or is it one person? What would their agenda be? Are you trying to change their mind or do they always agree with you? And purpose, are you persuading, argue, advise, or explaining? So always FLAP, whatever your topic is. Okay, next one, and I'm sorry the PowerPoint is playing up. I've done this 3 times. I'm going to try to keep going. Is our tips. It's our tips and features for writing to explain. Pause the video here and copy these down, maybe on flashcards, just to remind yourselves of the key skills for explain. They're slightly more subtle, I would say, than persuade and argue. You have to have a range of reasons. Explaining is giving reasons, essentially. So you have to have a range. You can't just have one reason. You have to have a range of appropriate details, so evidence to back up what you're saying. Yeah, you can't do that infuriating thing that just go, well, I just like it. I like it because I like it. You know, that's not explaining. That's the opposite. That's just repeating yourself. Specific examples of different kinds to support your explanation. So this is a bit like where you add facts to a persuade. You can make them up. Have examples, have facts, have statistics that back up what you're trying to say. Causal connectives. You cannot explain without them. Yeah? I'm going to put up a list in a minute, but you should have in your book, you might have them on the walls of your classroom. You can easily find them on a revision guide or online. Causal connectives, discourse markers to do with cause and effect. Things like because, therefore, etc. Nominalization and passive voice. Those are 2 tips that will push your grade up. And I'm going to go through them in a minute. A range of responses to the why part of explaining. So you need to cover the why. You need to cover your feelings and explain those. And then a range of responses to the how. So maybe there's a practical side to this. So if you're explaining, for example, your favourite subject, you might have a how side where you talk about the nuts and bolts of it. What do you do in it? In science, do you do experiments? How is it assessed? Do you prefer that way of assessment? And then a why. So why is science so good? So how, you know, why do you enjoy it? Why does it appeal to you? What are your aspirations? So one is more digging into the emotional side and the thoughts, and the other is the nuts and bolts. But the key thing is that it's clear and it's joined together with connectives. And the final one is the most important thing, is everything links together. With explanation, you cannot have an idea, then another idea, then another idea. You have to join them together smoothly. So one will lead to the other. It's all tied together, and you take the reader on a journey through it, using the connectives. That's why the connectives are so important. So you might describe something and then say therefore, and you put in a fact, and then you're going to push it on. Furthermore, and then talk about what you want to do next. So everything's joined together smoothly with these causal connectives. Okay, you might want to pause and write these down, but these are the most basic of causal connectives that I would expect to see. I would never expect to see overuse of and, but, and so, simply because they are too basic. So you have because, therefore, thus, consequently, as a result, subsequently, as a result of this, and so on and so on and so on. You can find many. You can copy these down. You can find them online. Discourse markers, causal connectives, there are loads. Learn some. Okay, so here's my first big tip for writing to explain. Nominalization. This will help you if you are trying to push from a grade 4 to a 5, 6, and then from a 6 to a 7 and 8. What it does is it makes your writing more sophisticated, and it pushes you to dig deeper in that into that why. And all it is where you take an adjective or a verb and you treat it as if it's a noun. So here's an example. This is your basic sentence. I enjoy reading many texts each day which give me valuable skills. So that's somebody, they're being clear, so they're probably getting up to that 4. They're clear, they make sense, there's no obvious errors there. But it's quite basic, which gives me valuable skills. I enjoy it. It sounds a bit, it doesn't sound very professional. However, as soon as you change I enjoy reading and you make enjoy to enjoyment to make it a noun, you suddenly change the tone altogether. The enjoyment of reading of multiple texts daily makes literacy a vital skill because the first reason why it sounds professional is you haven't just got I. And because you haven't got I, it sounds like you're talking about everyone, like you're talking about a fact or like it's universal. Yeah. As soon as you take out I, it could be your opinion, but it sounds like it applies to everyone. The enjoyment of reading of multiple texts. The other thing is, after you've written it in this form, the enjoyment of, instead of I enjoy reading, the enjoyment of reading, you can't then go, the enjoyment of reading many texts each day which give me valuable skills. It just doesn't sound right. It pushes you to sound more formal. And it pushes you to look for further reasons. And you'll find that the rest of your sentence naturally comes out more sophisticated. So the enjoyment of reading of multiple texts daily makes literacy a vital skill because. So it just sounds more universal, it sounds more formal. And the way you kick that off, and basically to revise this, you just practice it, you get the verb and you turn it into a noun. You treat it like a noun by putting the in front of it and using the noun form of the verb or the adjective. So I enjoy reading, the enjoyment of reading. Okay, the next one, which fulfills a similar purpose to make your writing more formal and more sophisticated sounding, is passive voice. So instead of I read many different texts every day, so it is a useful skill, again, that's someone saying the same kind of thing as before and still sounding a bit basic. They're okay, they haven't made mistakes, but they're not pushing it. So what you do is you take the verb and you move it to after the object. So you've got many different texts every day. Those are the things that are being done to, and this is the verb. So instead of going, you don't even need to know all the grammar talk. It's I read many different texts every day. So you start your sentence. All you have to remember is the every day. Every day, multiple texts are read by me. So the reading bit is at the end. So I read many different texts every day. Every day, multiple texts are read by me. And all that happened there was that I looked at many, thought it doesn't sound fancy enough, and I changed it to multiple. And then I've got some more judicious vocabulary marks. So it is a useful skill. So then I'm thinking, well, every day multiple texts are read by me, so it's a useful skill. It's not really advanced enough. So then I push it on to meaning that the skill of literacy is useful. And I've done exactly the same thing. It is a useful skill. The skill of literacy is useful. It just sounds better. And it's quite an easy one to learn with practice. You don't have to do every sentence like that, but a few will help you. Okay, so here is an example of a practice there using quite a lot of those skills we've talked about. Although not everybody would agree that spellings, punctuation and grammar are enjoyable, list of 3, few could argue they are not useful. To me, the enjoyment of English language results directly from its helpfulness, efficiency and worth, affording me numerous opportunities in life. For example, judicious use of vocabulary, often utilised in formal writing, has been of great support to me in exams. In the current employment market, this has supported me greatly when finding a job. So you can see there, I'm always connecting on another thing. I could have ended it there, then I've said, well, no, I had this vocabulary, it got me a higher exam result. I'm going to bring in the fact that jobs are hard to come by, so having a good exam result will help me. Yeah, and then I'm always pushing on, pushing on, pushing on. Okay, so if you want to pause that and have a look at some of the methods from that checklist that are used in this in this example, and then have a go at doing your own, answering this question, explain why you enjoy or enjoyed your favourite subject. And so you are going to try and use all those tips and put it together like this. Very quickly, we're going to move on to writing to advise. This was all about tone, yeah? With the others, you can be almost proud and aloof and authoritative. In this one, you've got to reach out a bit more. You've got to be a bit more sensitive. So you've got to ask yourself things like, is your advice catchy and interesting? Is its style and tone appropriate for the audience and purpose? Often you'll be asked to advise another teenager. You're not going to be asked to advise someone who knows more than you. Is the tone authoritative? So you have to be just about authoritative enough without being bossy. Is the help and advice given sufficient and appropriate? Again, similar to the tips for explain, your advice needs to be detailed enough. Yeah, you need several good pieces of advice. Yeah, and so what you need to do here is not just repeat, you need to add new advice. Is it clear? Yeah, think about your vocabulary. Judicious doesn't always mean long. It often means well chosen and short and clear. For example, the word apt, which means appropriate, would get higher marks than the word appropriate. Yeah, short and clear. Is it balanced and fair? You know, you're not asking them to climb a mountain. You're not, if someone's asking for revision help, you're not telling them to pass a degree before they've passed their GCSE. Okay, in terms of language, the two types of language you want to really focus on are modals and imperatives. These are verbs. They're verbs that help other verbs. So modals are you could, you should, you might. And imperatives are you must, turn off the switch, leave him. Imperatives are where you start the sentence with the verb. Go there, do this, say that, think this. Modals are similar, but they start with a pronoun and they just suggest what you should do. So you could, you should, you might, you must, you may. And you've got to use a combination of these. If you're doing practice writing, I've put a little activity here, which I'm not going to go through now, but you can use this checklist to look at have you used your modals, have you used your imperatives, are they effective? And finally, when you are writing to advise, you absolutely must plan your work clearly. This is a plan for a question about work experience. Many of you in sixth form will be starting BTECs or might even choose to get a part-time job in preparation for work. Some of you might be going on to an apprenticeship. So if you were doing advice about how to behave at work, you would start with a mind map like this. Then you would connect it together and you would want to advise people on how to behave. That key word, how. And you might say things like, you may want to call up and ask them whether they have a canteen on site or whether you need to provide your own food, because you do not want to be late back from lunch on your first day. Learning new skills. You should read the employee handbook. Benefits. Make the most of all the training they offer. So you're putting in those modals and you're putting in those imperatives throughout. Okay, year 11, the final thing I'm going to go through is very quickly this method, agony aunt. Okay, agony aunt is someone who writes an advice column, and it also helps you think about your ingredients for writing to advise. Okay, A is for audience. Who are you writing for? Pause and take notes. G is for giving good reasons to follow your advice. O is be objective, be fair and even-sided. N is for new paragraphs for new topics. We all know that. Y is for you. Use the word you every time. A is for authority. Sound like you know what you're talking about. U is for understanding. Understand them. Be kind. Don't have a bossy tone. N is for never be negative. T is for tone. Yeah? Think about it. You're writing to someone who is upset. So writing to advise. Agony aunt. You might want to learn this to help you. I hope that's useful, year 11. Don't forget to subscribe. And remember, there is a part 1 to this video. So if you haven't watched that, watch that.